Супер Гутен, супер Абен, супер дорогие, супер телезрители. Уже по традиции мы продолжаем нашу самую прямую всех самых прямых, нашу самую супер всех самых супер и самую трансляцию из всех самых трансляций. Let's go. Сегодня был большой день в Старкрафте. Я так краем глаза посмотрел пару игр. Димага там слился. Такому чуваку. К сожалению, я его давно не видел. Ни по стримам, ни по вообще, ни по... Тут он берет и сливается на турике. Ну, наверное, видно, да, там не до туриков сейчас. Жалко, конечно. О, Вивигота. О, набегался сегодня, как обычно. Набегался, ну ничего. Уехали. Панти Спенкер. Войт. Айронмен. Я до прошлый раз играл... я не стримил. Я иногда играю в нестримовце. Ну, чисто, чтобы короче, так, не подключаться, чтобы побыстречку, да, на пол тоненького. Блин. Играл с Даймондом, он, зараза, позанимал все нычки, блин. Пока я атаковал противника, он, зараза, позанимал абсолютно все нычки на карте. И мне некуда развиваться, но зато он Даймонд. А я золото.
Not enough minerals. More minerals required. More minerals required. Mineral quantity insufficient.
Короче, возьму себе жену китайку, блядь. Ну, и азиатку, короче, не важно. Какую-то хорошенькую азиаточку. Наверное. Опять же. Я уже решил это для себя.
Not enough minerals.
Хорошенькую. Да, посмотри, как хорошенький куча. Ну, смотри, что они все хорошенькие. Самое интересное, что китайки все хорошенькие. Процентов надо 99. Ну, здесь газятки. Я понимаю, что мы все люди, конечно, но вот чисто так сказать. Ну, как какие-то чуни-муни, какие-то телепузики точно. Да.
Allied forces in combat. Mineral quantity insufficient. Not enough minerals. Newly birthed queen ready. Insufficient Vespine gas. More minerals required. has evolved. Not enough energy. Mineral quantity insufficient. More minerals required. Allied forces in combat. Allied forces in combat. Allied forces in combat. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack. Allies base under assault. Allied forces in combat. Allied forces in combat. Insufficient. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces in combat. Allies base under assault. Allied forces in combat. Drones under swarm attack. Forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack.
Да, так что, короче, возьмем все в жены китайскую девочку, и все, и на этом успокоимся. Если еще и богатую, если еще и красивую, короче, туши свет. 28к я никак не могу 2700 набить, блин, ну ничего. Все будет, и будет нам счастье. О! И будет нам счастье. Да сука, я херовый купил. Хреновый, блин. Ужасно. Если мы еще сделал этот сидр. Что-то мне кажется, что если это, в принципе, тот же самый сок, но с другого магазина, блин. Если это такой же самый сок, надо всегда пробовать перед тем, как делать закваску. Иначе ты уже очень какой-то хуёвый сок. Яблочный. Что не 100%? Да нет. Там яблочного сока вообще не пахнет. Там воды больше, чем сока. Ладно. Так, что у нас перформанс? Вампирекс. Так, ну что? Интересно.
Not enough minerals.
Try the random. Okay, we'll see.
More minerals required. Mineral quantity insufficient.
Чувак еще на рандоме играет, вообще красава.
Must spawn more overlords.
Я что-то не загнал под ноготь какую-то хрень. И так неудобно кнопки нажимать. Теперь.
Not enough minerals. More minerals required. Overlord required. Mineral quantity insufficient. Allied forces in combat. Queen. Successful. Allied forces in combat. Allies base under assault. Insufficient overlords. More overlords required.
Oops.
Allies base under assault. Newly birthed, not enough energy. Must spawn more overlords. Queen birth. Allied forces in combat. Allies base under assault. Insufficient overlords. Must spawn more overlords. Not allies base under assault. Allied forces insufficient energy. Swarm forces not under attack. Insufficient evolution. Allies base under assault. Mineral quantity insufficient. More minerals required. Not enough minerals. Mineral quantity not enough. Energy minerals required. Not enough minerals. Mineral quantity insufficient. More swarm forces under attack. Not enough minerals. More minerals required. Swarm forces under attack. Quantity insufficient. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces enough in minerals. Mineral quantity insufficient. More minerals required. Not enough minerals. Mineral cluster insufficient. Overlords. Mineral quantity insufficient. More overlords required. More minerals required. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm has evolved. Allied forces in combat. Mineral field exhausted. Sequences spun. Swarm. Allied forces in combat. Allied forces in combat. Swarm forces. Mineral attack depleted. Mineral cluster expended. More overlords required. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces in combat. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces in combat. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces in combat. Allied.
Ну, такое себе. Very nice. Very nice and very good. А. Зерх разошелся на всю прям. Такой, Даймонд. Медленно ярочи. Зачпокали чувака. Такой штаб. Так, сейчас надо будет пойти сделать немножечко курочки поджарить. Притулчики. С хлебушком домашним. Домашний хлеб интересно делать, на самом деле. Его делать несложно, но надо понимать, как это делается. Иначе будет, фигня. Режима будет, мягко скажем. Хлеб получится, но он будет не очень вкусный. Такое. Но если сделать правильно, то он будет вкусный. Вкуснее, чем магазин. Вообще все домашнее вкуснее магазинного. Без консервантов, без всякой херни. Потому что он свежий, ты его сделал и скушал. Свежим. Медленно ярочи.
Not enough minerals.
Да, не загоняйте под ногти ничего. Бабу будет потом кнопки жать.
Must spawn more overlords.
Понятно. Пару. Понятно. Так, что у нас там происходит в мире вообще? Свободу Якутии.
Доки ти твориш себе, ми творимо для тебе.
Пане Романе, давайте про Бахмут, звісно, поговоримо, тому що, як пишуть наші військовослужбовці, які там перебувають, бахмутський демон, зокрема, ми часто його цитуємо, орієнтуємося, що працює невпинно там артилерія ворога, штурмові групи перебіжками, каже, бігають, в посадках сидять. Ми знаємо, що стягують вони зараз і залишки вагнерівців, яким все ж таки дадуть снаряди з усіх напрямків саме під Бахмут. Їм там теж припікає, я так розумію, і вони хочуть подаруночок Путіну зробити. Це от до 9 травня фінальний штурм зараз готується, як думаєте?
Ну, это один из штурмов. Это штурм, который нужен для того, чтобы 9 мая Путин хоть что-то сказал положительное. Ну, у него, в принципе, есть что сказать. Он захватил сухопутный коридор в Крым. и часть Луганской области. То есть, в принципе, он СВО может как-то подсветить, и наличие на параде, по крайней мере, частей, которые проводят СВО с их точки зрения, это как раз и говорит о том, что именно СВО будет подсвечиваться в положительном моменте. Ну, будет там вишенка на тортике в качестве захваченного Бахмута, или придется им этот торт без вишни есть, то здесь уже не сильно большое влияние имеет. Эта проблема больше Пригожина. Именно он взялся за, с их точки зрения, освобождение от украинских частей Бахмута. А он его уже раскатал в ноль, там уже Бахмута не осталось, но хотя бы географическое название он попытается преподнести как также либо связан обещаниями, либо, может быть, уже и обязанностями, если получил определенное количество финансирования для выполнения такой задачи. Проблема у Пригожина, только у него. Ну, а Путин уже в зависимости от того, что Пригожин принесет, разгром, победу или ничью по 9 числу, он уже это и озвучит. Или просто не станет даже упоминать ни Пригожина, ни Бахмут в том числе. Ну, а Пригожин уже себе с соломки подстелил невыполнение задачи по взятию Бахмута, он уже сбрасывает на непоставку боеприпасов своей ОПГ. Потому здесь и у него проблем в принципе нет. Но последние вот сутки, мы сейчас как раз находимся в этих последних сутках перед 9 мая, будуть ожесточені бої в районі Бахмута.
Але дивіться, йому дають боєприпаси. Ми з вами якраз говорили в п'ятницю, коли він нив шалено про це. А тут, бачите, все-таки вирішили йому дати. І Суровікіна, як вочевидь, оцього винуватця, потім на якого хочуть все перекласти, автора непростих рішень. От тепер боєприпаси Суровікін є в розпорядженні Пригожина. А як це допоможе йому?
Ну, боеприпасы ему точно помогут. Как ему там Суровикин поможет, непонятно. Скорее всего, Суровикина уже просто деть некуда, его хотя бы к Пригожину отправили. А вот боеприпасы он получил, мы, по-моему, в пятницу с вами это проговаривали, они были у него уже до этого, еще до того, как он вскрылся и сказал, что там ему что-то дадут. Мы с вами это проговаривали. Весь Донецкий и Луганский фронт на прошлой неделе он был полностью экипирован и боеприпасами, даже в количествах в 2 раза превосходящих их норму. То есть они получили достаточное количество боеприпасов, плюс подошли, очень много подошло танков, там чуть ли не танковая бригада с частями даже 90-х новых танков. То есть техника начала выходить на поле боя. Ну, понятно, погода позволяет. И та техника, которая была скоплена зимой, россияне сейчас ее выдвигают на Донецкие и Луганские фронта, и даже часть уходит и на Запорожский в том числе. Там была своя недостаточная техники, туда также техника идет. То есть они в ближайшее время будут пытаться провести контрудары, так называемые. Ну, во-первых, это продолжение наступления зимнего, только уже с техникой. Ну, естественно, контрудар перед нашим наступлением для того, чтобы постараться сбить наши части от направления удара, перетянуть на себя резервы и как-то нивелировать негативное восприятие наших наступательных действий.
І ці контрудари, як ви думаєте, коли вони можуть початися і на яких от саме напрямках, якщо конкретніше говорити, можуть бути застосовані?
Они уже начались, развиваться будут, скорее всего, на Кременском направлении, то есть с Кременной, там в сторону Торского, на Лиман, в сторону Сиверска, в сторону Белогоровки. Но вот основная база это у них Кременная. Именно в этом лесу сейчас достаточное количество техники. Сватово, Купенск чуть поменьше, хотя, тем не менее, рядом Валуйки. И они с Валуйк могут усилить давление. Это если мы начнем, правда, двигаться, то есть наш фланг. Вторая точка это однозначно будет Бахмут. Ну и еще 2 точки остается. Это район Донецка, это Марьинка и Авдеевка. То есть вот в этих 4 точках Марьинка, Авдеевка, Бахмут и Кременная будут основные точки приложения силы россиян в ближайшее время с помощью уже тяжелой техники в том числе.
Ну, тобто історія Бахмута, так би мовити, для них 9 травня не закінчиться. Вони продовжують і далі.
Однозначно они будут идти дальше, потому что нет смысла там находиться. Им либо идти дальше, либо возвращаться обратно в Попасну. А это смерти подобно. Лучше умереть с честью в Бахмуте, чем тебя прибьют Ахмат, прибьет в Попасну, но это уже с большим пожаром.
Так вони і вмирають. За 9 місяців боїв на Бахмутському напрямку втратили вони до 100 тисяч особового складу. Про це нагадав, бо ми чули вже ці цифри з вами. Нагадав сьогодні речник Східного угруповання військ Збройних сил України полковник Сергій Череватий. Це от 100 тисяч, воно вартувало цього?
Ну, дело в том, что там еще, если не показывают относительные некоторые вещи, вот если давайте с вами взлетим, полетаем чуть-чуть, посмотрим на все это сверху, сбоку. Вот чем в этом смысле летчики иногда полезны. Они видят поле боя сверху, сбоку, то есть видят всю карту боев и весь фронт сразу. Чем выше поднимаешься, тем больше обзор. Так вот, Пригожин, ОПГ Пригожина за несколько месяцев, чуть ли там не за год, 9 месяцев точно, они пытаются взять Бахмут. Так уже можно говорить год. Они на Попасную зашли где-то год назад. В Попасную где-то в апреле-мае месяце. Они зашли в Попасную, и с Попасной до Бахмута, это год целый, они прошли всего лишь 30 километров. 30 километров за год продвинулась ОПГ Пригожина из Попасной в Бахмут. В это время россияне вышли из армии российской, сотни тысяч человек. Вышли с севера Украины, зашли на Донбасс, вышли с Изюмского котла, зашли на правый берег Херсона, вышли с Херсона, перераспределились, как-то начинают где-то давить, а все это время ОПГ Пригожина медленно поднимается в гору в сторону Бахмута. Всего лишь 30 километров. Он угробил там десятки тысяч человек. Он действительно до сотни тысяч человек было угроблено именно в районе Бахмута. И это все ради 30 километров. Не нужного никому, им точно Бахмут не нужен, потому что после того, как они разбили своей артиллерии водовод, который питал Донецк с Северского Донца, а он за Бахмутом в районе Часовьяра проходит, из-под Славянска через Часовьяр на Оловку и Железнокальмовское водохранилище в Донецке вода подавалась. Так вот, после того, как они разбили насосные станции, этот водовод уже не нужен. Уже, естественно, и Бахмуту он не нужен. То есть они даже не помнят, вот сейчас спроси Пригожина и тех вояк, которые берут Бахмут, что вы делаете, они даже не вспомнят. Год назад им только задачу ставили в этот водовод взять. Так они ее уже не помнят, эту задачу. Чего не идут, потому что бараны. Ну вот эти бараны уперлись, как бараны в новые ворота, и они просто дальше не понимают, что делать, потому что если посмотреть сверху, сбоку, то как раз видится абсолютное бесперспективное движение россиян из Попасной в Бахмут в течение года, 30 километров, десятки тысяч жизней. Оно самое интересное, оно распиарено так, что это вроде бы как единственное достижение россиян. Ну вот, можно так и говорить, вот единственное достижение россиян за целый год, исходя из их пиара, это выход из Попасной, прохождение этих 30 километров, минусование сотни тысяч, ну и в конце концов придумывание отмазки, а почему в конце концов в Бахмут-то не взят. То есть, если честно, уже даже смеяться, уже можно надорваться от смеха, от действий этих командиров, которые такие задачи вообще ставят и выполняют в том числе. Ну, в этом вся Россия. Они все равно будут биться в этот, как бараны, новые ворота, еще раз повторюсь, будут биться об этот Бахмут, убьются, отобьют эти рога, в конце концов разобьют голову в ноль. Убьются вообще, но они все равно будут там стоять. То есть это нация, она логики не знает, причинно-следственной связи. Уже даже в воду уже другие люди, абсолютно другие люди перебросили трубу с водой с Дона в Донецк, правда, всего лишь увеличили на 2 часа раз в 3 дня поставку воды, так у них в Донецке вода была раз в 3 дня 3 часа, теперь сейчас у них раз в 3 дня 5 часов за счет этой воды с Дона. Так уже другие люди успели целый водовод построить, эти сотни километров трубы бросить, а Пригожин до сих пор эти 30 километров добивает. Вот вышел, называется, год назад. Ну, это уже и смех, и грех. То есть лет через, вернее, после нашей победы, вот эту операцию ОПГ Пригожина по взятию Бахмута, наверное, разберут все и вся на съемки фильмов, на басни, на сказки, на шутки, прибаутки. То есть будет очень интересная подача.
Mineral field exhausted. Newly birthed queen. Allied forces in combat. More minerals required. Queen birth successful. Swarm forces under sequences attack. Spun. Swarm mutated. Swarm forces under attack. Mineral field. Hive cluster. Swarm forces direct under attack.
Долбоёб, блядь. Чё, все свои войска слил, ушел, блядь? Да, понятно. Ну Пантера Росса, понятно. Что у него было с Workers Active? Блядь, как? Как он слил все свои войска, блядь? На чем? Еще деньги есть. Что можно купить за 5,65? Курицу? Рыбу даже не купишь. А можно фарш купить? Можно сделать. О, можно гамбургеры сделать. Ну, я не знаю, что он тормозил. Синдико. Я не знаю, что он сделал. Он просто слил все свои войска и все.
Not enough minerals.
Он взял третью базу и не защитил ее. То есть он поставил третью и не защитил. Ну, окей. Так, что у нас делаем?
More minerals required. Mineral quantity insufficient. More minerals required. Insufficient overlords. Mineral quantity insufficient.
Что это за звук такой, блядь? Это какой-то супер билд, блядь. 2 газа и фордж. Это чё-то супер, короче. Вот какой-то супер билд. 2 газа, потом фордж с 2 пилонами. А зачем тебе газ, если у тебя фордж? Дурак, блядь, лучше деньги экономи на работу.
This is the most dangerous problem in mathematics, one that young mathematicians are warned not to waste their time on. It's a simple conjecture that not even the world's best mathematicians have been able to solve. Paul Erdős, a famous mathematician, said, "Mathematics is not yet ripe enough for such questions." Here's how it works. Pick a number, any number. 7? Good choice. Okay, we're going to apply 2 rules. If the number is odd, we multiply by 3 and add 1. So 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. If the number is even, we divide by 2. So 22 divided by 2 is 11. Now we keep applying these 2 rules. 11 is odd, so we multiply by 3, 33, and add 1, 34. Even, divide by 2, 17. Odd. Multiply by 3, 51, add 1, 52. Even, divide by 2, 26. Still even. Divide by 2, 13. Odd. So we multiply by 3, 39, add 1, and that's 40, which is even. So we divide by 2, 20, divide by 2, 10, divide by 2, 5. Odd. Multiply by 3, 15, add 1, 16, divide by 2, that's 8, and then 4, 2, and 1. Now 1 is odd, so we multiply by 3 and add 1, which equals 4. But 4 goes to 2 goes to 1, so we're in a loop, and the lowest number is 1. Now the conjecture is this. Every positive integer, if you apply these rules, will eventually end up in the 4-2-1 loop. This is commonly called the Collatz conjecture after German mathematician Lothar Collatz, who may have come up with it in the 1930s. But the problem has many origin stories and many names. It's also known as the Ulam conjecture, Kakutani's problem, Thwaites conjecture, Haas's algorithm, the Syracuse problem, and simply 3n plus 1.
Why is 3x plus 1 so famous?
Among professional mathematicians, maybe it's not famous but infamous, in the sense that if someone actually admits in public that they're working on it, then there's something wrong with them.
The numbers you get by applying 3x plus 1 are called hailstone numbers, because they go up and down like hailstones in a thundercloud, but eventually they all fall down to 1, or at least we think they do. You can think of the numbers as representing the height above the ground in meters. So a number like 26 would start 26 meters above the ground. And if you apply 3x plus 1, it rises up as high as 40 meters, and in total it takes 10 steps to get to 1. So 10 is called its total stopping time. But take the very next number, 27, and it bounces around all over the place. In fact, it climbs all the way up to 9,232. As an altitude, that is higher than Mount Everest, before it too falls back to the ground. In total, it takes 111 steps for 27 to get down to 1 and end up in the 4-2-1 loop. The paths that different numbers take vary so widely, even numbers right next to each other. So how do you even start to make progress on this problem? Well, honestly, mathematicians struggled.
People just decided that this was something invented by the Soviets to slow down US science, and it was doing a good job at it because everybody's sitting there twiddling their thumbs and making no progress on this trivial thing that you can tell school children.
Jeffrey Ligarius is the world authority on 3x plus 1.
The first time I met him, I was a senior in college, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Don't do this. Don't work on this problem. If you want to have a career, do not start spending time writing about this or publishing any papers about this. Do real math for a while to establish yourself."
Alex Kontorovich didn't listen. He and Yakov Sinai looked at the paths of the hailstone numbers. Were there any patterns? Well, obviously all of them end up at 1, but what about the paths they take to get there? The pattern is randomness. Here is the sequence of a large number chosen at random. The graph peaks and then drops so low that you can't really see what's happening at this scale. But if you take the logarithm, you find this wiggly graph with a downward trend. It looks kind of like the stock market on a bad day. And this is no coincidence. Both are examples of geometric Brownian motion. That means if you take the log and remove the linear trend, the fluctuations are random. It's like flipping a coin each step. If the coin is heads, the line goes up. Tails, it goes down. 3x plus 1 is just like the random wiggles of the stock market. Over long enough periods, the stock market tends to trend upwards, while 3x plus 1 trends down. Another way to analyze 3x plus 1 is by looking at the leading digit of each number in a sequence. Here are the hailstone numbers starting with 3 as the seed. And we can count up how many numbers start with a 1, how many start with a 2, how many start with a 3, and so on to make a histogram. We can do the same thing for the sequence that starts with 4, that's a short one, and for the sequences that start with 5, 6, and 7. Again, for each sequence,
blah blah blah. And as far as we know, infinity could be real. The universe may be infinite in size and flat, extending out forever and ever without end, beyond even the part we can observe or ever hope to observe. That's exactly what infinity is. Not a number per se, but rather a size. The size of something that doesn't end. Infinity is not the biggest number. Instead, it is how many numbers there are. But there are different sizes of infinity. The smallest type of infinity is countable infinity, the number of hours in forever. It's also the number of whole numbers that there are, natural numbers, the numbers we use when counting things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Sets like these are unending, but they are countable. Countable means that you can count them from one element to any other in a finite amount of time, even if that finite amount of time is longer than you will live or the universe will exist for. It's still finite. Uncountable infinity, on the other hand, is literally bigger, too big to even count. The number of real numbers that there are, not just whole numbers, but all numbers, is uncountably insufficient. You literally cannot count even from 0 to 1 in a finite amount of time by naming every real number in between. I mean, where do you even start? 0, okay, but what comes next? 0.000000. Eventually, we would imagine a 1 going somewhere at the end, but there is no end. We could always add another 0. Uncountability makes this set so much larger than the set of all whole numbers that even between 0 and 1, there are more numbers than there are whole numbers on the entire endless number line. Gerhard Cantor's famous diagonal argument helps illustrate this. Imagine listing every number between 0 and 1. Since they are uncountable and can't be listed in order, let's imagine randomly generating them forever with no repeats. Each number we generate can be paired with a whole number. If there's a 1-to-1 correspondence between the two, that is, if we can match one whole number to each real number on our list, that would mean that countable and uncountable sets are the same size. But we can't do that, even though this list goes on forever. Forever isn't enough. Watch this. If we go diagonally down our endless list of real numbers and take the first decimal of the first number, and the second of the second number, the third of the third, and so on, and add 1 to each, subtracting 1 if it happens to be 9, we can generate a new real number that is obviously between 0 and 1, but since we've defined it to be different from every number on our endless list in at least one place, it's clearly not contained in the list. In other words, we've used up every single whole number, the entire infinity of them, and yet we can still come up with more real numbers. Here's something else that is true but counterintuitive. There are the same number of even numbers as there are even and odd numbers.
Not enough
At first,
energy.
that sounds ridiculous.
Allied
Clearly, there are only
forces
half
in
as many
combat.
even numbers as all whole numbers. But that intuition is wrong. The set of all whole numbers is denser, but every even number can be matched with a whole number. You will never run out of members of either set, so this one-to-one correspondence shows that both sets are the
Swarm
same size.
forces under attack.
In other words,
Swarm
infinity
rebirth
divided by
queen
2
ready.
is still infinity. Infinity plus 1 is also infinity. A good illustration of this is Hilbert's paradox of the Grand Hotel. Imagine a hotel with a countably infinite number of rooms. But now, imagine that there is a person booked into every single room. Seemingly, it's fully booked, right? No. Infinite sets go against common sense. You see, if a new guest shows up and wants a room, all the hotel has to do is move the guest in room number 1 to room number 2, and the guest in room 2 to room 3, and 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and so on. Because the number of rooms is never ending, we cannot run out of rooms. Infinity minus 1 is also infinity again.
More
If one guest
minerals
leaves the
required.
hotel, we can shift every guest the other way. Guest 2 goes to room 1, 3 to 2, 4 to 3, and so on.
Mineral
Because we
quantity.
have an infinite
Swarm
amount of
forces
guests,
under
that is a
attack.
never-ending supply of them, no room will be left empty.
Not
As it
enough
turns out,
minerals.
you can subtract any finite number from infinity and
Queen
still be
birth
left with
successful.
infinity. It doesn't care. It's unending. Banat-Tarski hasn't left our sights yet. All of this is related. We are now ready to move on to
More
shapes.
minerals
Hilbert's
required.
hotel can be applied to a circle. Points around the
Allied
circumference can be
forces
thought of
in
as
combat.
guests. If we remove one point
Mineral
from the circle,
quantity
that
in
point is
insufficient
gone,
energy.
right? Infinity tells us it doesn't matter. The circumference of a circle is irrational. It's the
Insufficient
radius times
enemy
2 pi.
assaulting
So
drones.
if we mark off points beginning from the hole, every radius length along the circumference going clockwise, we will never land on the same point twice. Ever. We can count off each point we mark with a whole number. So this set is never ending, but countable. Just like guests in rooms in Hilbert's hotel. And like those guests, even though one has checked out, we can just shift the rest. Move them counterclockwise, and
Must
every
spawn
room will be
more
filled.
overlords. More
Point 1
minerals
moves to
required.
fill in the hole. Point 2 fills in the place where point 1 used to be. 3 fills in 2,
Mineral
and so on.
quantity insufficient.
Since we have an unending supply of numbered points, no hole will be left unfilled. The missing point is forgotten. We apparently never needed it to be complete. There's one last neato
Not
consequence of
enough
infinity we
minerals.
should discuss before tackling Banat-Tarski. Ian Stewart famously proposed a brilliant
More minerals
dictionary,
required.
one that he called the Hyperwebster. The Hyperwebster lists every single possible word of any length formed from the 26 letters in the English alphabet. It begins with A, followed by AA, then
Allied
AAA,
forces
then
in combat.
AAAA, and after an infinite number of those, AB, then ABA, then
Нормально, слышишь?
ABA,
quantity
ABAA,
allied
and so on
forces in
until
combat.
Z, ZA, ZAA,
Insufficient
etc., until the
energy.
final entry, an infinite sequence of Z's. Such a dictionary would contain
Not
every
enough
single
energy.
word. Nay, every single thought, definition, description,
Insufficient
truth,
allied
lie,
forces
name,
in
story.
combat.
What
Swarm
happened to
forces
Amelia
under
Earhart
attack.
would be in that dictionary, as well as every single thing
Allied
that
space
didn't
under
happen to
assault.
Amelia Earhart. Everything
Swarm
that could be
forces
said
under
using
attack.
our
Allied
alphabet.
space under assault.
Obviously, it would be huge, but the company publishing it might realize that they could take a shortcut. If they put all the words that begin with A
required.
in a volume titled A, they wouldn't have to print the initial A. Readers would know to just add the A because
Swarm
it's the A
forces
volume.
under
By
attack.
removing the initial A, the publisher is left
Not
with every
enough
A
mineral.
word,
Ally
sans the first
space
A,
under assault.
which has surprisingly become every possible word. Just one of the 26 volumes has been decomposed into the entire thing.
Queen
It is
allied
now that
forces
we're ready
must
to
combat.
investigate this
Mutation
video's
complete.
titular paradox. What if we turned an object, a 3D thing, into a hyperwebster? Could we decompose pieces of it into the whole thing?
Swarm
Yes.
forces
The
under
first thing we
attack.
need to do
Mineral
is
field
give
exploded.
every single point on the surface of the sphere one name and one name only. A good way to do this is to name them after how they can be reached by a given starting point. If we move this starting point across the surface of the sphere in steps that are just the right length, no matter how many times or in what
Mineral
direction we
cluster
rotate,
expended.
so long as we never backtrack, it will never wind up in the same place twice. We only need to rotate in 4 directions to achieve this paradox:
Mineral fields.
up, down, left, and right, around 2 perpendicular axes. We are going to need every single possible sequence that can be made
Mineral
of any
cluster
finite length
expended.
out of just these 4 rotations. That means we will need left, right, up, and down. Left,
Exhausted.
up, left, down, but
Mineral
of course
field
not
depleted.
left, right, because, well, that's backtracking. Going left and then right means
Mineral
the same as
cluster
you were
newly
before.
birthed.
Also, no left rights, no right lefts, no left wrongs. Also, notice that I'm writing the rotations in order right to left, so the final rotation is the leftmost letter. That will be important later on. Anyway, a list of all possible sequences of allowed rotations that are finite in length is
Swarm forces under attack.
countably infinite, in fact. But if we apply each one of them to a starting point, in green here, and then name the point we land on after the sequence that brought us there, we can name a countably infinite set of points on the surface. Let's look at how, say, these
Mineral
4 strings
field
on our list would
depleted.
work. Right, up, left. Okay, rotating the starting point this way takes us here. Let's color code the point based on the final rotation in its string. In this case, it's left, and for that, we will
Not
use
enough.
purple. Next up, down, down. That
Creep
sequence
to
takes
more
us
under
here.
attack,
We
under
name the
attack.
point DD and color it blue, since we ended with a down rotation.
Swarm forces
that
creep
previous
to
one's
attack,
name,
under
takes
attack.
us here, and for a final right rotation, let's use red.
Allied
Finally, for a
forces
sequence
under
that ends
attack.
with up,
Allied
let's
forces
color
in
code the
combat.
orange. Now, if we
Sequences.
imagine repeating this process for every single sequence, we will have a countably infinite number of points named and a color code. That's great, but not
Блядь, мне
enough.
нравится, когда у меня, блядь,
There
линк,
are
блядь.
an uncountably infinite number of points on a sphere's surface. But no worries, we can just pick a point we missed, any point, and color it green, making it a new starting point, and then run every sequence from here. After doing this to an
Ладно.
This video has been made possible by Wondrium. What is your address?
What's my address?
Not just your house number or the
Сиськи,
name
блядь.
of your street. Where, actually, are you?
Сиськи,
In a
блядь.
town or a city which is in a country, on a continent, on Earth. But where is Earth? Why, it's in the solar system between Venus and Mars, you might say.
Мгм. But where is
Where?
the solar system?
Is that? The solar system is the main part of the Oort cloud, a vast collection of comets, asteroids, and icy objects swirling at the fringes of the sun's sphere of influence.
Oh, nice.
The Oort cloud resides in the local interstellar cloud, which is in the local cavity of the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way is a spiral galaxy with beautiful, sweeping arms of millions upon millions of stars, all rotating around a bright galactic core with a dark, supermassive black hole at its center. At over 100,000 light years across, the Milky Way is vast, but it is still just a sliver of what we can see. Zoom out further and you'll see a local group with 30 to 50 small galaxies and a monster on a collision course, the Andromeda Galaxy. Twice the size of the Milky Way, Andromeda is speeding towards us. We will collide in a few billion years, tearing each other apart before coalescing into one. But when you zoom out even further, the impending collision of two galaxies seems inconsequential. At the scale of millions of light years, the structure of the Virgo supercluster, a collection of thousands of galaxies, becomes apparent. And dwarfing even that is the Laniakea supercluster, hundreds of millions of light years across, containing several other superclusters like our Virgo, and which is itself part of the Pisces Cetus supercluster complex, a galactic filament almost a billion light years long. And it is now that the cosmic web becomes visible. There are more filaments like our own, as well as great strings of superclusters. There are also giant stretches of space with virtually nothing in them. Like the Boötes Void, an area 330 million light-years across in which we have discovered barely 60 galaxies. An ink blot on the speckled sky. Zooming out further, we finally reach the edge of the observable universe, where primordial light has been traveling since nearly the beginning of time, 13.8 billion years to reach our eyes. But since then, of course, the universe has expanded further, meaning that the true distance to the edge is about 46 billion light-years in one direction, meaning the full observable universe is a sphere 93 billion light-years in diameter. Structures any larger than a few billion light-years are hard to define with our current technology, partially because we are trying to map something we inhabit, and partially because there may well be a limit, something scientists call the end of greatness. But at every level up to this point, planets, solar systems, galaxies, clusters, superclusters, the universe is full of structure. It is not a random and chaotic jumble. It seems
Not enough minerals.
organized. Yet the universe started as a hot, dense soup of particles. Why should it now be
Mineral
structured?
quantity,
Why
Allied
did that hot
space
soup
under
evolve
assault.
into a universe where some parts are filled with beautiful, sweeping
Allied
arms of
space
sun,
under assault
while
minerals.
others are barren deserts?
Allied forces in combat.
We know.
More. New mineral quantity insufficient.
How did we start
Allied
this
space
channel?
under
To begin
assault.
with, a lot of research and in-depth exploration of the universe's first moments, and a huge part of that was done
Swarm forces
through
under
Wondrium,
attack.
the educational
Not
subscription
enough
service.
minerals.
And I'm not exaggerating. Wondrium used to be called Great Courses Plus, which made university-level lecture series, and they've now expanded to contain even more content. From travelogues and tutorials to long-form documentaries,
Swarm
Wondrium
forces
is now
under
the best
attack.
place for all
Mineral
the high-quality,
quantity
enjoyable
insufficient.
content that is guaranteed to make you smarter. One great example of this is Sean Carroll's peerless lecture series, Dark Matter, Dark Energy. I am currently on my third listening
forces
and I learn something new each
minerals
time.
required.
24 half-hour cosmology lectures given by the best
Mineral
science
quantity
communicator out there.
insufficient.
For example, it really helped me understand the reasoning behind the theory of inflation. Just superb, and only
evolution
one of
complete.
many other courses on offer. I'm not exaggerating when I say that without Wondrium, this channel may not have existed. It is the best educational subscription service out there, and they're giving viewers a great offer of a free trial.
Allied
So get the
forces
fantastic
in
education I
combat.
did by
Minerals
heading over to
required.
wondrium.com/history of the
forces
universe.
under
Thanks
attack.
to Wondrium for supporting education on YouTube.
Queen Birth. Allied forces
The year
in
is
combat.
1502. Nikolaus Copernicus should be
Swarm
studying
forces
medicine.
under attack.
It is the center for medical education in Europe. All the best teachers and students gathered to learn how to heal the sick. Nikolaus is a polymath. He's learning medicine, but he's also reading Aristotle and Plutarch and Plato,
Allied
finding holes in
forces
Ptolemy's
in combat.
theories in his spare time. Finishing his degree, he returns home to Poland to work as a physician with his father, but he doesn't forget about the cosmos or our place in it. So it was a decade later that he writes a
Newly
pamphlet
birthed
outlining
queen
his now
ready.
ubiquitous theory. We are not the center of the universe. The Earth orbits the Sun, just like
Allied
all the other
forces
planets.
in combat.
We are not special. Niklaus knows the uproar this will cause, so he doesn't publish right away. It is only in his 70th year, some say it's actually on his deathbed that he approves the final copy, that the book finally comes out.
Insufficient energy.
It shakes the very foundations of science, astronomy, philosophy, and religion. An idea so dangerous and fantastical that its proponents would be persecuted for decades after its publication. The heretical notion that our Earth is just the third planet among many. At the time, it was a shocking thought, but it marked only the beginning of a larger revelation.
Swarm
For if we're
forces
just some
under
planet
attack.
orbiting a random star, what does that make us? Not special. It's a sad
Queen
realization at
birth
first,
successful.
but when we think deeper, it opens up a world of possibilities. If we are not special, what else is out there? Who else is out there to discover? Known as the Copernican principle, the idea is now a bedrock
Not
of modern
enough
cosmology.
energy.
It has two related tenets. The Earth is not
Insufficient
special.
energy.
We don't occupy some privileged position in the universe. Therefore, observations from the Earth should be relatively representative of observations from anywhere. One modern-day discovery that backed up this claim was the detection of
Not
the cosmic
enough
microwave
minerals.
background,
Mineral
or
quantity.
CMB. Fuzzy background static, it permeates the sky, no matter in which direction you look. No matter how powerful your telescope, if you keep zooming in on a part of the sky
More
with nothing in
minerals.
it, you will still detect faint microwave radiation.
Allies
Always
allied
the same
forces
wavelength,
in combat.
emitted at a time close to the beginning of the universe, the moment when matter cooled down enough for protons to capture electrons and become clear gas. It is everywhere. In this regard, our bit of the universe is totally
Allied forces in
no matter
combat.
what direction you look, the temperature is about 2.7 degrees Kelvin. It doesn't matter if you are floating in outer space near the Milky Way
Ready.
or past distant Methuselah. The average temperature of empty space is about the same. But there is an obvious
more
issue
Vespine
with this,
gas.
one that doesn't require a high-powered
Allied
telescope to
nonsense
recognize.
energy.
Our cosmic address is full
Mineral field
of
exhausted.
huge structures. Galaxies, superclusters, great walls of stars, hundreds of millions of light years across,
Allied
great
forces
voids of
in
nothing.
combat.
The universe clearly isn't totally uniform.
Insufficient
We aren't
mineral
special,
cluster. Not
but there
enough
are
energy.
structures. All large-scale structure in the universe can be explained by two opposing forces: expansion
Mineral
and gravity.
field evolution
The
complete.
universe started hot and dense, and then underwent three phases of expansion.
Must spawn
First
more
lasted a fraction of a
overlord
second
mineral
and was
quantity.
extreme. This is called inflation.
Not
Then continued
enough
to expand in a
minerals.
second stage for several billion years at a more reasonable rate, cooling down, spreading out, and slowing its expansion. And in the last few billion years, it has entered a third stage, in which expansion has
Swarm
accelerated
forces under
again.
attack.
And so what is responsible for these shifting regimes of expansion? The latter expansion, a mysterious energy, so baffling it's simply known as dark energy. In truth, we don't know for sure. What we are sure of is the existence of gravity, which has spent billions of years battling against the quickening expansion. When a part of the early universe became a bit denser, that overdensity attracted more matter, which consequently made it more massive, and so gravity acted even stronger to bring more matter in. Clouds of dust and gas became stars, which clumped into galaxies, and so on. It was and is gravity doing what gravity does, at its most basic level. Problem solved. but not quite.
Интересно.
Because you can't start this process with a totally even universe. Just where did the first overdensities come from? The best answers we have now started to be revealed with space telescopes in the late 1980s, and the race to map the entire universe to higher and higher resolution. The Cosmic Background Explorer, COBE, was launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in Southern California by NASA in 1989. The Cold War was ending, and a new era of cooperation between global superpowers was about to begin. And what better way to start this new era than the first baby picture of the universe? COBE had a bold mission: take detailed images of the entire celestial sphere and tell us how uniform the background radiation really is. And so on April the 24th, 1992, the results were plastered on the front page of the New York Times. Scientists report profound insight on how time began. COBE had mapped tiny variations, anisotropies, in the cosmic microwave background radiation. They were very small, just 1 part in 100,000,
Not enough
but they
minerals.
were there. This blockbuster result won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2006 for 2 of the lead astronomers on the telescope, John C. Mather and George F. Smoot, with the Nobel Committee marking it as the birth of cosmology as a precise science. The success of COBE led NASA to launch another telescope in 2001, called the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, or WMAP. This further proved the blockbuster capabilities of space telescopes, and instead of a vague smear of under and overdense regions, WMAP was able to tell fine structure, and patterns started to emerge. So again, in 2009, the Planck satellite was launched by the European Space Agency to get an even better picture of the baby universe. Each successive experiment kept demonstrating the same principle. There were tiny fluctuations in the very early universe, which, after being stretched out by expansion and clumped by gravity, led to the structures we see today. And there are dozens of other experiments, telescopes, and satellites, each discovering and mapping new parts of this structure. Back on Earth, one of the best telescopes for mapping the universe is the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. Perched on a mountain in New Mexico, this telescope creates a map of the whole sky in an unusual way. First, the astronomers take a regular optical image. Then, they create an aluminium plate with a precise hole drilled for each star or other astronomical object in the image. They then run a fiber optic cable from each of the holes in the plate to spectrographs, so they can find the colors of the stars and therefore find out how far away they are and how fast they're moving. These rainbow-collecting aluminium plates are each custom drilled and capture a unique slice of the universe. So far, over 10,000 plates have been drilled. By combining data from different surveys, astronomers managed to define Laniakea, our local supercluster.
Ай-яй-яй, this is how we did
A
it.
group of thousands of galaxies all bound together by gravity. And our universe maps are filled with many more fantastical places. Of course, stretching out from our own local group of galaxies is the Virgo supercluster, whose tendrils connect into the Centaurus supercluster. Beyond that is the Perseus Pisces supercluster, and the South Pole World, which stretches across over 1 billion light-years. And the Sloan Great Wall is about 1 billion light-years in the other direction, an equally mammoth structure. Some astronomers believe that the Milky Way and a large part of Laniakea actually reside within another supermassive void known as KBC, proposed to be almost 2 billion light-years in diameter, though its existence is still hotly debated. And even these have been dwarfed by a recent discovery.
Not enough
Giant
minerals.
Arc was discovered in 2021 and is about 9 billion light-years away. It is thought to span 3.1 billion light-years, 3.5% of the observable cosmos, and is so huge it actually challenges our assumptions about the universe on the largest scales. If you zoom all the way out, a pattern appears. Filaments tie together into walls and clusters with large voids hanging between them. But what is the structure of this web? Is it like meatballs of matter in a soup of emptiness, or pancakes of matter arranged at jaunty angles? Surprisingly, answering this seemingly ridiculous question, which kitchen metaphor does the large-scale structure of our universe most resemble, would obsess the field of cosmology for decades. Truth, pride, and Nobel Prizes for its stake. At the largest scales, is the universe like a meatball soup, a honeycomb,
Mineral
or a
quantity
sponge?
insufficient.
A grizzled veteran of the Soviet atomic program sits in his office in Moscow, contemplating the universe. How did the large-scale structure of the universe arise? He asks himself. Perhaps his contemplations make him hungry. Alive. On the other side of the world, a mild-mannered Canadian sits in his office in Princeton, contemplating the universe. How do tiny particles become huge galaxies? Similarly, hunger-inducing thoughts. So perhaps he wanders down to the cafeteria for a break. The name of the astronomer in America is Jim Peebles. He would eventually win the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2019 for theoretical discoveries in physical cosmology. He and others of the American school believed that matter in the universe was organized like meatballs in a low-density soup. Matter would attract matter, which would attract more mass, clumping together in roughly spherical assemblies, leaving vast areas of low density. This was a bottom-up approach. The large-scale structure is formed by clumping smaller-scale structures. Meanwhile, behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet astronomers were busy developing their own theory. Yakov Zeldovich was the Russian musing on the cosmos. By the 1970s, he was a renowned physicist who had cut his teeth in the Soviet nuclear program before turning his attention to the large-scale structure of the universe. He had developed a theory where the density of the universe was organized in 2D pancakes, and where the pancakes overlapped, you would have galaxy formation. In this way, the large-scale structure comes first. Galaxies are formed from them. In Zeldovich's universe, there are large empty voids with filaments on the edges of pancakes and clusters where pancakes intersect.
Newly birthed queen ready.
Zeldovich was a brilliant scientist with a lot of sway in the Soviet Union, but because of his role, he was rarely, if ever, permitted to leave the USSR. His ideas therefore took longer to disseminate than they might have otherwise. And so at the height of the Cold War, you had Jim Peebles, a soft-spoken Canadian living in the USA, advocating for a universe dominated by meatball clumps. And the Russian school, led by a hardened veteran of the Soviet atomic program, believing in the pancake model. Meatballs versus pancakes. There's no evidence of animosity between the two, but without hard data, each stuck to their own beliefs. But luckily, between them was an unlikely interloper. Martin Rees, an English astronomer who would one day become the UK's Astronomer Royal. He acted as a sort of go-between for the American and Russian schools. The English were more permissive about which meetings they were allowed to attend than either the Americans or the Russians. And so, Rees's postdoc, a man from Kentucky named Richard Gott, then developed a third theory that better matches the findings of later experiments, like the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. Gott met Zeldovich at a conference in Estonia, then part of the USSR, in 1977. And this meeting, along with developments in observation, would lead to a new understanding of the universe. As recounted by Gott in his book The Cosmic Web, Zeldovich was a character. Always use the median. In Russia, the watches are not made very well, so when friends get together, they compare the times on their watches. One says 5 minutes to 5, another says 5 o'clock, the other says 11 o'clock. Use the median. Inspired by the brilliant Soviet, Gott would develop a new theory. The universe is like a sponge. the topology
Queen
of God's
Earth,
universe
mineral
lies
field
conceptually
exhausted.
between the American meatballs and the Russian pancakes. According to him, high-density and low-density regions are connected and complementary. In other
Mineral
words, you
field
could switch high
newly
density
birthed
to low
queen.
density and it would be the same.
Mutation complete.
As new maps like those from the Sloan
Not
Digital
enough.
Sky survey became available, this is the structure that was observed. Neither meatballs nor pancakes, but a sponge. But this is not everything that our telescopes have seen.
Queen
As our
Earth
methods of scanning the
evolution
skies have
complete.
improved and we have seen further and further back in
Swarm
time with
forces
increasing
under
detail,
attack.
something strange has been observed. Phenomena referred to by
Cluster
some
under direct
as the
assault.
end of greatness.
Swarm
Around
forces
a billion
under
light
attack.
years, the universe finally becomes homogeneous, the same everywhere.
Allied forces
Large-scale
in combat.
structure disappears.
Mineral cluster expended.
Imagine you are in Ecuador,
Swarm
look up in the
forces
night
under
sky with a
attack.
telescope and observe the cosmic microwave background radiation in all of its majesty.
Swarm forces
Take a
under
careful
attack.
measurement.
Command
Temperature. Now
unacceptable.
fly to Indonesia, on the equator, on the exact opposite side of the
Swarm
Earth.
forces under attack.
If you take a careful measurement of the temperature of the CMB, you'll find it matches the measurement you took in Ecuador. The light from each point took about 14 billion years to reach you, meaning the points would now be 28 billion light years apart. Except that space has been expanding in the intervening years, so they're
Allied
really much
forces
farther
in
away
combat.
than that. And yet, the universe is only about 13.8 billion years old. To put it simply, there hadn't been enough time for the light that you saw in Indonesia to have reached the light you saw in Ecuador.
Swarm
So how
forces
could
under
they
attack.
possibly be the same
Command
temperature? How could
unacceptable.
they know what temperature to agree on if they couldn't thermodynamically talk to each other? Perhaps it's a coincidence. So you pick two other random points in the sky. They will also match temperature to within 1 part in 100,000. This is the horizon problem. When you look at the
Sequences
microwave
spun.
background radiation,
Swarm
it is
mutated.
extremely uniform. When you look at colorful images from experiments like WMAP or Planck, the color differences are deceptive. The differences between red and blue are actually tiny. They are differences of 1 part in
Allied
100,000.
forces
For almost
in
all
combat.
intents and purposes, that's
Mineral
the same
field
temperature.
depleted.
And so this poses a fundamental physical challenge. And it is one of the reasons for the
More
development
minerals
of the
required.
idea of inflation. The theory, proposed by Alan Guth in the 1980s, is that there must have been some very rapid expansion in the early universe. With inflation, parts of the universe that are now
Allied forces
separated by
under assault.
unimaginable distances could have been in very close proximity in the past. But in order for
Allied
inflation to
forces,
solve the
allied
horizon problem,
space.
it would have to have taken place much faster than the speed of light. This may seem counterintuitive because of the universe's scale of
Forces
light,
in
but
combat.
that only applies to matter and energy within the universe. Space itself doesn't equal this speed.
Forces under
In
attack.
fact, due to the rate of expansion of the universe, space today is still expanding faster than the speed of light. Two galaxies more than 15 to 20 billion light years apart
Allied
would be moving
forces
away from each
in
other
combat.
faster than light. This means that the part of the universe you saw
Allied
in
forces
Indonesia
in
and the part you
combat.
saw in Ecuador
Mineral
used to
cluster
be much
expended.
closer together. So close, in fact, that they could equilibrate and cause the haze of uniformity that we see when we look out. But of course, inflation is an extraordinary claim, for which extraordinary evidence is
Mutation.
required, and
Allied
definitive
forces
observation of this theory
under
remains
assault.
elusive. Despite this, indirect proof continues to pile, which makes
Swarm
inflation
forces
an attractive
under
theory.
attack.
As we know, a universe that undergoes inflation will be homogeneous, which on large scales ours is. An inflationary universe would also be flat, which ours appears to be. This flatness refers not to the number of dimensions, but instead to the effective density of matter and energy in the universe.
Under attack.
Cosmologists can measure evolution in two ways. First, they can count up all the mass and energy in the universe and divide it by the critical energy density, the density at which the universe would be flat. And they can also measure its geometry by measuring angles. Like the Earth, a triangle drawn on the surface will have angles that add up to more than 180 degrees. The 3D geometry of the universe would be closed like this if it had more stuff in it. Eventually, gravity would pull everything together into a big crunch.
Minerals
In a
required.
universe with less stuff in it, expansion would continue forever and space would be hyperbolic. In a flat universe, straight lines and angles make sense. Triangles have angles that add up to 180 degrees.
Mineral
Results
quantity
from both sides of the
insufficient.
experiment show that what we have is a flat universe. Another plus point for inflation. And so this is strong evidence for the theory. But how then did inflation work to make the universe we see? One of almost perfect homogeneity,
More
but not
minerals required.
exactly perfect.
Fascinating.
Much, of course, can be gleaned from the universe's baby picture, the CMB, which shows us the after effects of very early fluctuations in density in the early universe. But anything before the CMB is obscured
Allied
by the fact
forces
that everything
in
was too
combat.
hot for light to travel
Not
in straight
enough
lines.
minerals.
Excited electrons kept getting in the way, and inflation is supposed to have happened within a tiny fraction of a second after the birth of the universe. And so, there are nearly 380,000 years of physics that are hidden by the haze of 3-degree radiation. Where did these early fluctuations seen in the CMB
Mineral
come from?
cluster
It's easy to
expanded.
point at a tree and explain that it grew from a seed. But where did the
Creep
seed come
tumor
from?
under attack.
Imagine a box with nothing in it.
Allies
Close
base
the lid
under
so no
assault.
light can get in. Cool it down to absolute zero. Insulate it with lead so no radiation can penetrate. Is it empty? The universe is a fundamentally
Successful.
place. There is no such thing as truly
Allied
empty
forces
space.
into
Even if
combat.
there were no matter inside the box, space is always permeated by quantum fields with different
Allied
values at different
space
positions.
unacceptable.
The Higgs field gives things mass. Another, the electromagnetic field, gives things
Swarm
charge.
forces
Which gives
under
things
attack.
combat. One of the
Mineral
big
field.
discoveries of early
Allied
modern
space
physics,
under
like the
assault.
works of Heisenberg, Einstein, and Planck, was the inherent noisiness of the universe. There is uncertainty at the smallest scales, which shows up as a faint buzz in the quantum field.
Swarm forces
Quantum
under
realm,
attack.
even empty
Creep
space is
tumor
filled
under
with quantum
attack.
fields whose values are varying randomly. But why
More
is this important
minerals
for the
required.
large-scale structure of the universe? To answer that question, we
Mineral
have to go back
field.
to the
Allied
very
space
start.
under assault. Not enough minerals.
In the beginning,
Enemy
the observable
assaulting
universe
drone
was
attack.
hot, dense,
Mineral cluster
tiny,
expanded.
and also tiny quantum
Swarm
fluctuations were
forces
buzzing along,
under
very
attack.
small differences in the rolling patchwork of energy fields.
Successful.
As they do today. And then, suddenly and dramatically, inflation. The universe rapidly expanded by 26 orders of magnitude in a tiny fraction of a second. Changes this extreme are
Allied
hard to
forces
describe. We don't have the
under
words to
attack.
properly conjure the scale of this explosion in our heads.
Live cluster
26
under
orders of
direct
magnitude
assault.
is a grain of sand 1 millimeter across, expanding a septillion meters across. That's 100 million light years.
Allied forces
And the
were
violence of this
successful.
detonation was staggering.
Mineral
In 10 to the
quantity
minus 33
insufficient.
seconds, the
Swarm
observable
as
universe went from microscopic
Command
to
unacceptable.
huge. For all intents and purposes, the expansion
Allied forces in combat.
and so this inflation amplified the quantum noise of the vacuum into genuine differences in density. Thus, giving gravity
minerals
all it
required.
needed to work its attractive magic, gathering mass together. Stars, galaxies, clusters, and
complete.
filaments. These generations inconceivably tiny quantum fluctuations, core forces, vast intergalactic filaments, many millions of light in length, tiny acorns growing into vast
Mineral
forests.
quantity insufficient.
But that is not the end of the story.
More minerals required.
After inflation was complete, the universe continued to expand and cool down, but it remained extremely hot and dense. If the large-scale structure of the universe were clearly shaped by the expansion of quantum fluctuations, you would expect everything to be distributed fairly randomly. Indeed, if you look at the population of galaxies and ask how far each galaxy is from each other galaxy in the population, you should see a simple relationship and regular clustering. Galaxies would tend to be fairly close together because of the clumping effect of gravity. And so, you should be less and less likely to find two galaxies separated by larger distances. And yet this is not what astronomers see. When they do this kind of analysis, they observe one peak of the galaxy that are as expected, another separation of about 150 megaparsecs. What explains what seems like an arbitrary distance?
Allied forces
The answer
in
lies in
combat.
what's known as baryon acoustic oscillations. Galaxy dwarfing sound waves.
Where's my badge full, блядь?
For hundreds of thousands of years after the Big Bang, it was too hot for atomic nuclei to capture electrons. The universe was a sea of charged particles, and photons of light couldn't travel in straight lines.
depleted.
They would get bounced around in every direction until they hit the next stray electron. As it cooled, some of the regions that were more dense would pull more and more
minerals
stuff in.
required.
But the
Vespene
photons exerted
geyser
pressure when they get too close together, and this pressure would push out, carrying some. And this is where dark matter entered the
Not
picture.
enough
Dark
minerals.
matter outweighs regular matter in the universe by 5
Hive
times.
cluster
Was
under
and
direct
remains the
assault.
dominant gravitational force. The cosmic web of stars, galaxies, and filaments is really
More
a web
minerals
of dark
required.
matter, with regular matter tagging along. It accounts for something like 85%
Hive
of the
cluster
gravity of the
under
universe.
attack.
So everything from
Swarm
galaxy
forces
formation
under
to star
attack.
clustering and
Insufficient.
gravitational lensing
Mineral
is
field
dictated
depleted.
by its properties. And yet we still don't know what it is. What we do know is that dark matter interacts gravitationally, but doesn't seem to be affected by electromagnetism,
Hive
such as light,
cluster
or
under
the other
allied
fundamental
forces in
forces.
combat.
So, as clumps of density began to form in the
Swarm
early universe,
forces
the
under
photons would
attack.
eventually get squeezed so much that they would burst out in a ferocious wave, carrying some regular matter, also known as baryons, but leaving the dark matter behind in the center. Imagine a pebble dropped in a pool. There is a central splash and then concentric rings of ripples. Now imagine millions of pebbles dropped at slightly different times. It would create a complex jumble of splashes, ripples,
Mineral
and
quantity.
regions where the
Swarm
rings
forces
interacted.
under attack.
This was the state of the universe after inflation.
Allies forces in combat.
Once it reached 3000 Kelvin, protons were able to capture electrons and the
Creep
phase
tumor
changed.
under allied
Instead of a
forces
bubble
under
or
attack.
plasma,
Under
it
attack.
became a transparent
Allied
gas.
space
The moment
under
the
assault.
universe became transparent, the cosmic microwave background radiation escaped.
Allied
The expanding
forces in
rings
combat.
suddenly stopped because the photons that were carrying the matter were no longer coupled with that matter.
Allied
The
space
photons
under
rushed off in a
assault.
straight line, leaving the ring frozen at the distance it had reached. And that distance is 150 megaparsecs. Exactly
Allied
where we
forces
see the
in
second
combat.
bump in
Mineral
the graph
cluster
of
expanded.
galaxy separations. This is one of the ways that
Allied
cosmologists
forces
can see
in
combat
allied
the
space
CMB
under
by
assault.
deciphering the patterns in its seemingly random distribution. Dark matter is central to this story, and indeed the structuring of the universe that followed. In fact, in a lot of ways, dark matter is the true main character in the narrative of the universe.
Охуенно.
Yet, they almost completely undetected until the mid-20th century.
When I was fighting the dudes,
Back in
he was like,
1933, a young and ambitious Swiss astronomer named Fritz Zwicky noticed something odd about the speed of stars in a galaxy. He observed that two
It's like
independent
I'm
measures
fighting,
of the
I'm
mass
fighting the
of a
dudes
cluster
and
of
he's got
galaxies
the half
weren't
of the
lining
map
up.
and he's just, oh,
If he
okay,
counted
fucking
up all
binds,
the
like,
stars and added their
fucking do
mass,
something,
he
Blade.
got a number 10 times less than if he instead calculated the mass by looking at the speeds of the galaxies in the cluster. He thus concluded that there must be an enormous amount of unseen mass. However, it would be more than 30 years before further evidence would come to light, as pioneering astronomer Vera Rubin set her sights on spiral galaxies. In predicting the motions of stars around the center of galaxies, astronomers had always made three assumptions. 1. Gravity depends on distance and mass. The closer and more massive two objects are, the stronger gravity acts on them. 2. Spiral galaxies have most of their stars in the very bright central regions. And 3. Stars on the edge of galaxies would have less gravity acting on them and would travel more slowly. This is analogous to our own solar system. Most of the mass is contained in the Sun, so the close planets like Mercury, Venus and Earth travel much faster than the gas giants Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. So imagine Vera Rubin's surprise when she observed the speeds of stars in nearby spiral galaxies. She found the relationship between speed and distance traced a straight line in her graph. Instead of acting like the solar system, the stars on the edges of spiral galaxies traveled just as fast as those in their cores. And so there was a fourth, hidden assumption that astronomers were making, which Rubin made explicit.
More
While it
minerals
was true that
required.
spiral galaxies have most of their stars in the central regions, the stars don't account for most of the mass. In order to account for this increased speed, normal matter, stars, dust, nebulae, could only account for 15% of the total matter in the universe. So what was
Not enough minerals.
dark matter?
Mineral quantity
The leading theory
insufficient.
currently is WIMPs,
Not
weakly
enough
interacting
minerals.
massive
More
particles.
minerals
These would be
required.
elementary particles
Mineral
like protons or
quantity
neutrons,
insufficient.
but would have peculiar
More
properties.
minerals
Unlike
required.
protons, which have a charge
Not
and interact
enough
with light,
minerals.
these WIMPs would be invisible and only interact with gravity. They would also need to be much heavier or much more numerous in order to make up for the missing mass in the universe. Today, we know that all galaxies except some dwarf galaxies have larger halos of dark matter surrounding them. Scientists estimate that the Milky Way's halo could extend up to 15 times further than the matter we can see. Searches for these particles at particle colliders like the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, at giant vats of noble gases in Antarctica and other places have so far come up without definitive proof for the WIMP theory. But scientists are hopeful, as dark matter explains so much about the large-scale structure of the universe. It makes everything make sense. The echoes of baryonic shockwaves, the speeds of galaxies, and the patterns of clustering. In the growth of structure across the universe, normal matter, what we see and what we are, is only really a bit player. The main role in building the universe goes to this mysterious, invisible stuff. And so, the minuscule quantum fluctuations to galaxy dwarfing sound waves and finally vast tides of dark matter, our webbed universe is born. Problem solved? Not quite. There are further structural mysteries out there. Mysteries we haven't even begun to unravel. We all moving in the same direction. Earth is spinning on the Earth, which is revolving around the Sun, which is spiraling around the galaxy, which itself has motion. But zooming much further out, all the galaxies around us in Leorra are pulled towards the same point in space. We are all moving in the same direction. But where are we going? As scientists studied the CMB for the first time, it became clear that our local group of galaxies was not stationary. It was
Insufficient
moving relative to
overlords.
the CMB. In fact, we are rushing at around 1,000 kilometers a second towards a point 215 million light years away.
Queen
This point
birth
was
successful.
dubbed as the Great Retractor.
Must
What was there? Why this particular point and not
newly
somewhere
birthed
else?
queen.
If, according to the Copernican principle, no point in space is more special than another,
Swarm
why should so
forces
much
under
mass
attack.
move towards this one spot?
More
We didn't know
overlords
then, we
required.
still aren't sure. One challenge was that whatever we were heading for was very hard to observe because we had to look through the center of our own galaxy, an area known as the Zone of Avoidance, and one through which our view is obscured by interstellar dust. But we could see through it with X-rays, and this method revealed a group of galaxies known as the Noma Cluster. But this alone wasn't enough to cover the flow of galaxies, and so scientists watched the Great Attractor and came to a remarkable conclusion. It is itself in motion towards a greater source of mass. 650 million light-years away lingered a vast supercluster, the largest for 1 billion light-years. Known as the Shapley supercluster, this leviathan contains the mass of nearly 10,000 Milky Ways. But that wasn't the end. In 2017, researchers proposed a further element. Dubbed the dipole repeller, it
More
is a large
minerals
void in
required.
almost the exact
Not
opposite
enough
direction to the
minerals.
Shapley supercluster. Whereas Shapley pulls, this area of space doesn't
Mineral
literally
quantity
repel, but its
insufficient.
underdensity means it can't overcome more powerful gravitational forces. And we are sandwiched in the middle of this massive stellar flow, almost 1 billion light-years across. Though this may seem unbeatably large, this is only the beginning of the structural oddities that appear in the large-scale mapping of the cosmos. One long-standing mystery that came to light in the early
Not
2000s was
enough
related
minerals.
to the assumed homogeneity of our universe. The issue is fairly simple. If you divide the sphere of the CMB into 4 or 8, the top right is on average hotter than the bottom left. This effect disappears if you divide the sky into more and more pieces. But for the quadrupole and the octopole, the angle of the line between the hot part and the cold part matches almost exactly with the plane of our solar system. This is a result so odd that astronomers have named it the axis of evil because it threatens to break our most fundamental ideas about the universe. Why would the background of the universe be aligned with our solar system? We don't know.
Чего?
Nobody does.
Что?
The chief scientist of the WMAP telescope, Charles Bennett, thinks it must be a coincidence. I do think that there is a bit of a psychological effect. People want to find unusual things. But even with new data from the Planck telescope, the effect is reproduced. In the words of Dominik Schwartz from the University of Bielefeld in Germany, for a long time, part of the community was hoping that this would go away. But it hasn't. It is still totally unexplained. We understand so much about our physical world. We can shoot satellites into the sky to take baby pictures of the universe and use these images to rewind the cosmos back to its first moments. Between general relativity and the standard model of particle physics, we think we have it all figured out. But there is much we do not know. Of course, in order to have structure in the universe, first, the universe must begin. So how did we get our start?
More minerals
What
required.
set off inflation? The answer to this question may be hidden in the patterns of the universe's largest structures. One idea is that in the primordial universe there is a roiling sea of dense vacuum energy, and it just takes something to set off an inflationary bubble, which then grows into a universe. But there's nothing saying ours was the only inflationary bubble. Perhaps another universe formed nearby, just on the other side of the CMB. And if it went through inflation, it might collide with
Mineral
us.
quantity
So this is
insufficient.
one big mystery that the CMB may yet hold the answer to. great spots in the sky resulting from collisions with other bubble universes. We haven't seen anything yet, but even the possibility of evidence for multiverse theories is so sparse that merely a method to find a glimmer of truth is enough to excite scientists.
Insufficient energy.
Where are you? The
Newly
observable
birthed
universe,
evolution
Lancia, Virgo
complete.
supercluster, local
More
group,
minerals
Milky Way,
required.
Orion Arm, local
Not
cavity,
enough
local
energy.
interstellar cloud, Oort cloud, solar system, Earth. At every scale, there is structure, there is order. This structure is governed by simple
Allied
principles.
forces
Gravity is
insufficient.
dominated by dark matter, and
Swarm
expansion,
forces
which is now
under
driven
attack.
by dark
Insufficient
energy, but
Vespene
which at one
gas.
stage was the result of inflation. And yet these
Need
basic
more
principles
Vespene
turn matter and
gas.
energy
Command
into huge,
unacceptable.
beautiful
Allied
structures,
forces
bathed
combat
in the warm
successful.
glow of the cosmic microwave background radiation.
Not enough
Copernicus,
minerals.
Shapley, Zwicky, Rubin, Zeldovich, Peebles, Gott. All of these scientists and the teams that supported them have brought us this far in uncovering its secrets. And yet,
Allied forces
despite
in
all that we
combat.
know, there are still mysteries out there, written in the stars.
Not enough energy. Command unacceptable.
You've been watching the entire history of the universe. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Insufficient energy.
Блять, опять что ли, блять, у меня какая-то хуйня глючит? Да что же это за, блять... Ебаные соседи, как меня заебали уже, блять.
Must spawn more overlords.
Какую-то хуйню, блять, по нам прижали, какую-то хуйланов каких-то, блять.
Mineral quantity insufficient.
Только я вообще интернет отрублю, блять, если буду ее...
Not enough mineral. Additional Vespene gas required.
Урод, блять. Блять, что происходит, блять? Помешали какая-то куча хуйланов, блять. Запускали какие-то торрентов, блять, какой-то хуйни, блять.
Not enough energy. Insufficient energy. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm has evolved. Sequences spun. Swarm mutated. Evolution complete. Not enough energy.
Ты один что-то, блядь,
Newly
отстрелил,
birthed
нахуй.
queen ready. Command unacceptable. Command unacceptable. Mineral field exhausted. Queen birth successful. Mineral cluster expended. Newly birthed queen ready. Insufficient Vespene gas. field. Insufficient energy. Queen birth successful.
Это я лагаю пока.
Not enough energy. Swarm has evolved. Newly birthed command unacceptable. Queen birth successful. Command mineral field exhausted.
Нет, а почему я лагаю? Ну, блядь.
Swarm forces under attack. Enemy sequences struns. Swarm mutated. New. Swarm forces under attack. Drones under attack.
Короче. Ты долбёб?
Additional Vespine gas required.
Блядь,
Evolution
что же это, блядь, за
complete.
хуйня такая? Короче, блядь. Ебаный пидор.
More overlords required.
Сейчас
Allied forces in
завершаю стрим,
combat.
блядь, я сейчас всем отсюда перед подрубаю нахуй, пидорам, блядь.
Swarm forces under attack. Assault. Insufficient Vespine gas. Insufficient overlords. Mineral cluster
Я
expended.
всем интернет подрубаю нахуй. Приезжали какие-то хуйланы, блядь, сюда, блядь. Запускали какие-то торренты, блядь, ебаный в рот, блядь.
Forces in combat. Enemy assaulting drones. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack. Allied forces mineral field depleted. Allied forces in combat. Additional Vespine gas required. Mineral field exhausted. Swarm forces under attack. Swarm forces under attack.
А, здрасте, блядь.
Allied forces in combat. Swarm forces under attack. Mutation complete. No, not possible. Supply limit reached.
Пидоры, блядь. Да гандоны, блядь. Папа, какие-то торренты, блядь,
Not
ебаные, блядь.
sequences spun. Swarm mutated.
Пидоры, блядь.
Mineral field depleted. Swarm forces under attack. Mineral cluster expended. Mineral field exhausted.
О, что, все, блядь? А что ж такое, блядь?
Mineral field depleted.
Что случилось, блядь?
Swarm forces under attack. Mineral cluster expended. Mineral cluster expended. More overlords required. Allied forces in combat.
Так, кстати, снова какой-то хуйню страдал, я, конечно, извиняюсь, но это пиздец какой-то, это, блядь, приезжаешь все как говна, блядь, с Украины, блядь. Пока.